Hello, good day to each and every one of you. My name is Nehema Sohar. I'm going to report the chapter 17 multi-level governance. I'm the first part actually. By the way, how's your vacations, everyone? Don't ask me if how's my vacation because I'm in Cebu right now. Cebu sa Walay. Corny. Now, okay, let's start. Okay. Chapter 17 Multi-Level Politics. Key issues. Why does politics always have a territorial dimension? What is multi-level governance? And how successfully do federal and unitary system of government reconcile territorial and other differences? By the way, don't mind the noise that you're hearing right now because as you can see, I'm here sa Walay kaya I don't have a choice. Now, the evolving dynamics of political authority, influenced by the globalization, have led to the concept of multi-level governance in challenging the traditional dominance of nation-states. Now, the evolving dynamics of political authority. Political authority is the power and influence that the government or a leader has over its own people and other countries. So this power is sometimes can be changed. It is because of different factors. And isa na dun is yung globalization. Because we all know that globalization is the interconnectedness and interaction between countries and people around the world. Now, because of that, it leads to the concept of multi-level governance, which will be discussed in the further slides. Now, internal divisions shaped by constitutional structures like federal or unitary system undergo both centrifugal and centripetal pressures. International division. International divisions is the differences and conflict that exist within a country or a region because of various reasons. Isa na doon is yung culture, languages, ethnicity, politics, and others. Now, these divisions, it create tension and challenges for people who live in the same areas. Now, federal and unitary system is two type of constitutional structures that define how a country or a region is divided into smaller units called states or provinces. Now, it all undergo both centrifugal and centripetal pressures. So, centrifugal and centripetal pressures are two forces that affect how the political authority is distributed within a country or a region. So, what is the difference between them? Centrifugal pressure means that people want more freedom and independence from the central government. As for centripetal, most likely that they are almost opposite because centripetal pressure means that people want more unity and cooperation with the central government or authority. Again, centrifugal pressures, people want more freedom and independence. As for centripetal pressures, people want more unity and cooperation. Now, the rise of transnational regionalism respond to the challenges, surpassing individual state capacities, suggesting a shift towards a world of region. The rise of transnational regionalism. Transnational regionalism. Transnational regionalism is a new form of political cooperation. It involves multiple regions, meaning it's not only one region. And it is an area who have a common interest and goals. For example, there's some region that wanted to protect their environment from pollution, or climate change. So most likely they have the same goals and they have the same interests. They will be working together. with other regions around the world, to meaning that's the transnational regionalism, which is the multiple regions or areas with common interests and goals are working together. Now, it's suggesting a shift towards a world of region. Ano yung world of region? World of region is an idea that creating a global community. A global community based on their regional cooperation rather than national competition. Meaning a global community with an cooperation rather than competing. Now, why does EU is an advanced example of this transnational regionalism? Bakit nga, diba? Bakit ba ang EU ang example? It is because ang EU created many institutions and policies that bring together 27 countries from Europe under one legal framework. They are promoting peace, democracy, human rights, economic growth, and others. So meaning, there is an involvement of multiple regions and common interests and goals. So that's why EU stands as an advanced example of transnational regionalism. Hope you understand. Now let's go to politics, territory, and multi-level governance. Politics has always had a spatial or territorial dimension, as political rule involves making and enforcing general rules or over a particular population. This must imply taking account of where those people live, even if their location is imprecise or shifting. Politics always had a spatial or territorial dimension. Why? Why does politics always had a spatial or territorial dimension? It is because the location of people or groups affect their political interest, preferences, and action. Example is that spatial dimension of politics, it influences how people vote. Diba? How they form parties and movement, how they cooperate or compete with other regions or countries, and how they deal with issues such as borders, resources, security, and identity. One of the example here is that voting, for example, spatial model of voting. Kasi, it is a way of explaining why people vote for different parties or candidate based on their distance from their political compass. Ang idea dito is that people who live closer to a party or a candidate tend to vote for them rather than those who further away, diba? Because in times of pangangailangan, diba? Mas mapapadali din if i-vote mo yung near sa'yo kasi most likely they are the one who can come first. So for example then, if there's an project, something ganun na most likely na i-vote ko talaga is yung near sa akin because it can help me, for example, rather than those who live in further region, something like that. Kasi nga, of course, if there's an project na doon nila ilalagay sa kanila, doon sa further, wala nga naman sa amin, diba? So, yeah. Meaning that people who live closer to a party or candidate tend to vote for them more than those who live farther away. So, that's why. Now, so because of that, the association between politics and territory became more formalized and explicit from the 16th century onward as a result of emergence of what do we call now, syempre, mga modernized state. Now, we should note that politics and territory are closely connected because politics can influence and control a geographic area. Politics can influence and control a geographic area. Isa na dito is that it governing people with a state's border, ensuring political rule and sovereignty. So, yeah. Now, the, there are two further development consolidate the importance of territory. As you can see, at the first one, which is the first of this was the emergence of nationalism from the late 18th century onwards. As nationalist doctrines spread, so did the idea that national communities are in part forced by their decision of having a homeland. As state evolved into nation-state territory, therefore became a matter not just of legal jurisdiction but also of identity and emotional attachment. Now, at the late 18th century onwards, nationalism daw became a big deal because people starting to believe that being part of a nation meant that having a connection to a specific place they called their homeland. Now, as the countries now evolve into nation state, territory is become only not just about laws but also about who we are emotionally and where we feel we belong. So, for example, if you live here in the Philippines, most likely it is your homeland, and also you call this or you call this your you feel that you are belong because you are a Filipino. When you hear the Filipino, they are from Philippines because they are Filipino. So most likely it's not just about the law, but it is about who we are emotionally and where we feel we belong. Now, the second one is the development was the strengthened association between national power and territorial expansion that was brought about by imperialism. Now, how people linked the nation's strength to taking over more land, and this was because of imperialism. So the idea kasi is that the more territory a nation has, the more powerful it's seen to be. Diba? Now, the emergence of secessionist groups and ethnic nationalism has led to the decline in the unity, coherence, and ability to maintain territorial sovereignty of established nation-states in Quebec, Canada, and others. As the pressures for political decentralization grew, major constitutional upheavals were precipitated in a number of states. Now, the emergence of secessionist group and ethnic nationalism. Secessionist group is a group of people who advocated for the separation of region or territory from a larger political entity such as country. Itong mga secessionist group kasi, they seek to establish an independent state or join another country. Here in the Philippines, we have several secessionist group here that advocated for independence in the Philippines. And isa na doon yung mga MNLF, yung mga MILF, and also the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, and lastly, of course, the Abu Sayyaf. Now, ethnic nationalism. So, ang ethnic nationalism naman is a form of nationalism in which the nation is defined in terms of ethnicity, culture. Sa kanila kasi, gina-emphasize nila is that yung importance of preserving the culture and ethnicity, identity of a group of people. So, to give an example is that here in the Philippines, may mga instances na meron tayong ethnic nationalism. Example nito is yung sa Cordillera People's Liberation, which is the CPLA, and the New People's Army, which is the NPA. Now, let's go to the geopolitics. Geopolitics is an approach to foreign policy analysis that understands the actions, relationships, and significance of state in terms of geographical factors, such as location, climate, natural resources, physical terrain, and population. To make it simple, geopolitics is a way of studying how geography affects politics and foreign policy. Um, Kasi geography kasi, it can influence yung mga countries to interact with each other. 'Di ba? So what resources they have and what challenges they face and what opportunities they can pursue. Example, to give an broader sense, we have an example here, which is the Philippines. We all know that Philippines is an island nation in Southeast Asia, and we have a lot of natural beauty, biodiversity, and cultural diversity because we have different tribes here, different religions. Now, we all know that the Philippines has a long history of colonialism, independence, and democracy. So now, we are located near the South China Sea, which is isa sa pinaka-importanting area for trading, security, and resources. So, because of the South China Sea, we have many dispute with China over some islands in water in the South China Sea, di ba? Now, yung Philippines has a close ties with the United States. Kasi nga, we consider them as our ally and protector. So, that is the geopolitics, which is the studying how geography affects politics and foreign policy. Now, we have a territory, which is, alam nyo na yan, centralization and decentralization. Centralization, the concentration of political power or government authority at the national level, which is a central. The expansion of local autonomy through the transfer of power and responsibilities away from national body. Now, to give you an mas magandang differences of these two is that centralization is all the important right, meaning yung centralization is that yung mga important rights and power is nasa hand ng central, which or in the top level of management. While in the decentralization, from the word decentralization, yung mga powers, yung mga decision makings na it lies with multiple persons and different levels of management. Meaning na like it transfers of power in decision making from the central authority to lower levels of government such as the regional or local government. If the centralization, it is centralized, which is nandun lang siya sa central yung mga important mga political power government authority, while the decentralization, it is a transfer of power of central government to the lower level of government. Now we have here state were losing political authority, and political authority also becoming decentralized and going to regional organization. This happened because globalization, and it brings cross-border flows and transaction of people, goods, money, and foe. To give you an example of a state that losing political authority in decentralization because of globalization is EU, European Union. Because European countries became more interconnected through cross-border flows of people, goods, money, information, and ideas because they decided to work together more closely. We all know that the EU is an organization, diba? Where participating countries share some political authority, making joint decisions on various matters, showcasing the decentralization of political power from individual states to a regional level. Kasi nga, we all know that EU is an organization. So, it have 27 countries that working together. So, those countries that working together is they share some political authority. So that's why um, political authority doon is nagiging decentralized. Kasi nga, there is an interconnected of people, goods, money, information, and ideas. Now, the combination of this process through which an increasing burden of political decision-making has been made both above and below the national level has helped to reshape territorial politics and generate interest in the phenomenon of multi-level governance. Mm, uh, Meaning that political decisions are now being made not only by individual countries but also by the groups above, and yung above na yung meanings the international organization. Below is yung mga local governments. And it leads to the new way of governing, or what we call multi-level governance, that we will be discussed now. Multi-level governance, which is the main core of my report. Now, multi-level governance is a complex policy process in which political authority is distributed at different levels of territorial aggregation. Meaning that multi-level governance is a way of making decisions where political power is shared among different levels. And yung mga different levels na yun are the local, national, and international. Imagine niyo na there's an decision about environmental protection, Then, yung local government, they might decide on specific rules for recycling, di ba? Doon naman sa national government, na they could set overall environmental standards. Lalo naman sa international agreements na they can cooperate on global issues like climate change. So, itong mga mixed decision na to is what do we call now a multi-level governance. Kasi nga, the different levels are working together. Do you want to have some example pa? To give a further example, yung BARM. Diba? It was created in 2019 as part of the agreement between the Philippines government and the MILF. So, the BARM kasi has its own government structures with powers and responsibility devolved from the national government. So, it has its own parliament. So, it's responsible for passing laws and policies that are specific to the region. So, the BARM government works closely with the national government to ensure that the needs of the region are met. So, that's example of multi-level governance. To give you an example again is that yung case dito sa Israel and Gaza, it can be called the multi-level governance kasi nga yung conflict kasi it involves multiple actors. Example yung Israeli government, the Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and other regional and international actors, which is the UN, diba? So, this conflict has implication for regional stability, international law, and human rights. So, yeah, that's why multi-level governance is the different levels of government. The different levels of governments are working together, making the decision together. Now, the vertical conception of multi-level governance takes account on the independence of actors in the policy process at subnational, national, and transnational levels, creating a fluid process of negotiation. So the idea that it is a vertical is that multi-level governance kasi it consider how different levels of government such as the local, national, international to work together and negotiate. Meaning it is flexible negotiation process that involves different various players. Now, example na naman. To give an example of the vertical part is that think ka ng global trade agreement. Just think. Local businesses may have concern, and that local businesses is what we call subnational. And national government negotiate terms of behalf of the country. So that's a national. Now, the discussion with other countries in that state transnational. So interaction and negotiation across this level illustrate the vertical aspect of multi-level governance, meaning they are working together. Now, much of the complexity of multi-level governance derives from horizontal developments such as growth of relationships between states and non-state actors in the emergence of new forms of public-private partnership. Complexity of multi-level governance comes from how states interact not just with each other but also with an NGO, which is non-governmental groups. Um, it includes ito yung mga partnership within public and the private sectors. To give you an example is that consider kayo ng public-private partnership to build and manage a city's public transportation system. Example, the government. Ang government nag-collaborate siya with a private company to fund and operate the system. So itong mix na to of state and non-state actors that working together, ito yung sinasabi niyang horizontal. Meaning, it is on government and non-governmental groups. It is a public and private sectors that are working together. Now, I hope you understand. Now, let's go to subnational politics. Now, all modern states are divided on territorial basis between central and peripheral institutions. Now, the balance between centralization and decentralization is shaped by a wide range of historical, cultural, geographical, economic, and political factors. The most prominent of these is the constitutional structure of the state as a minimum, the framework within which centri-periphery relationships are conducted. Now, in simple terms, countries have split between central, which is the national, and the peripheral, which is the regional, provincial, or local. Now, it is how much power each level has depends on factors like their history, cultural, geography, and others. Now, the constitutional structures of the state, which is like a rule book for the country. It is a rule book for the country. It plays a big role in deciding how much authority the central and the local government have. For example, in the United States, the Constitution outlines the power of the federal government, which is the central, and the individual states, which is the local. Now, yung balance ng of these states, the balance between these levels is influenced by the historical decision and ongoing debates. Now, showing the constitutional structures, it shapes yung relationship between sa dalawa na yun, which is the central and local parts of the country. So it's being that the constitutional structure is being the rule book for the country, and it deciding how much authority the central and local government should have. Now, let's go to the two most common forms of territorial organization found in the modern world are the federal and unitary system. Confederation has generally proved to be unsustainable. Confederation established only the loosest and most decentralized type of political union by vesting sovereign power in peripheral bodies. To make it simple, there are two main ways countries organize themselves, which is the federal and unitary system. Diba? Yan yung common. That is the common forms of territorial organization sa atin. For example, here in the Philippines, we use unitary system. In the US, they uses federal. In the Canada, they use federal. So, confederation naman, for confederation is hindi na siya nagagamit ngayon kasi it is unsustainable. Kasi nga, mas binibigyan nila ng mas malaki yung power ng mga local rather than the central. So most likely na there's a lot of weaknesses in confederation. For example, in the federal kasi, like the United States, diba? We have a central and individual state that have these significant powers. Now, and sa unitary naman, we have then yung United Kingdom, which a unitary system kasi almost lahat ng power is nasa national level. And yung mga local government naman, it operates under the authority of the central government. So, it's on central government pa rin. Now, yung confederation, example nito is the Articles of Confederation in early US history. Kasi, dati kasi, the US, they attempted to use confederation. But it proved to them that it is unsustainable kasi nga it leading to the adoption of the more centralized, which is hindi talaga siya nakaka-sustain. Ineffective talaga yung confederation kasi nga weak yung central authority. So, meaning, hindi talaga siya nakaka-sustain. Now, let's go to the federal system, unitary system, confederation. Like what I've said before, federal system, a system of government in which sovereignty is shared between central and peripheral levels. Meaning there's the power of central and there is a power of peripheral level, which is local, national, something ganun. Yung unitary system naman is a system of government in which sovereignty is located in a single national institution, allowing the century to control the periphery. Meaning, the unitary system naman, yung power is more on nasa central. And if may power naman yung periphery sa kanila, it is an authority pa rin, galing pa rin yung sa central. So more on, unitary system is nasa central talaga yung decision making. Now, confederation is a qualified union of state in which each state retains its independence, typically granted by unanimous decision making. So, which means that in confederation kasi na imbis na malaki yung sa central, mas madami yung sa mga states. Yung mas malaki, example yung sa US, which is, di ba, naisipan nilang i-try yung confederation but it did not sustain kasi nga, mas malaki yung power ng state kaysa sa dun sa central, which is independence yung state. So, marami talaga, like, for example, there's a lot of competition naman na mangyayari, ganun, and the central cannot control the state kasi nga mas malaki yung power ng state. So, di ba, it's kinda weak talaga. It's not sustainable to use the confederation. As of this moment here in 2024, there's no such thing as confederation. Now, federal system of government, or like what I've said before, it is almost 1/3 of the world population is governed by the states that have some kind of the federal structures. 1/3 lang. 1/3 of the world population is governed by the states. Most likely talaga na gumagamit ang mga federal system is yung mga malalaki yung geographical area nila kasi di kaya ng unitary system. Kasi if they uses unitary na parang it unsustainable din kasi nga malaki yung geographical size nila. So most likely federal system is uses by yung mga mas malalaking land gaya ng sa USA, Brazil, Pakistan, Australia, and others. Now, see here that no two federal structures are identical. The central features of each is sharing of sovereignty between central and peripheral institution, which is, I will discuss this further to this slide further, okay? Now we have here the federalism and the autonomy. Now we have here federalism. It refers to the legal and political structures that distribute power territorial within a state. It has been taken to imply reciprocity or mutuality. Federalism requires the existence of two distinct levels of government. neither of which is legally or politically subordinate to the other. Its central feature is therefore shared sovereignty. So in simpler terms na, federalism means a sharing power between different levels of government within a country. Involves dito yung levels of government, which is the central, that are completely controlled by each other. Now, the key idea here in federalism kasi is that it's shared sovereignty, which both levels, which is the central and the periphery, have some authority. So federalism is most likely parang federal system na din siya. It's just that federalism is a political philosophy or principles emphasizing the distribution of power between a central authority and constituent political units. Okay, it is federalism is a political philosophy or principle. Okay, now we have here autonomy. From the Greek meaning law unto oneself, literally means self-rule. State, institution, or groups can be said to be autonomous if they enjoy a substantial degree of independence, although autonomy in this connection is sometimes taken to imply a high measure of self-government rather than sovereign independence. Now, autonomy naman. We have here, autonomy means that having a freedom to make your own decision and govern yourself to a significant extent. It doesn't really necessarily mean na you have your complete independence, but it implies that a good amount of self-rule. Okay? For example, yung farm, di ba? Autonomous, yung farm. Kasi, we have our own freedom to make that law within the di ba, we have the, what do we call this, we have our own law, for example, which is a Sharia law, so we have the freedom to use that, di ba? Pero it not necessarily mean na we are already independent, but it's just that we have our own self-rule. Oh my goodness. Now, I hope you understand. Now, let's go to why they uses federalism, not unitary system, right? Now, federal principle is more applicable to some state than to others. For example, gaya ng sabi ko kanina, which is the US. They're trying to use confederation or unitary, but it is not applicable to them because they have this high geographical area. So, most likely talaga, it's not applicable to all the federalism. For example, here in the Philippines, we have our own unitary system, diba? So, meaning, it is applicable to us. Hindi talaga lahat is applicable yung ganoong system. Example lang, a country that uses federalism but it didn't work well is yung sa African state of Nigeria. Kasi they tried to adapt federalism nung nag-gain sila ng independence in 1960, which is consisting of central government and a region with considerable autonomy. Pero nga, the attempt of federalism faced challenges kasi particularly in African state like Nigeria is nagkaroon sila ng ethnic and regional tension kasi there are 3 regions, which is a northern, western, and eastern. Now they all have differences in culture, ethnicity, and economic resources. So yung diversity na to, it leads to the power struggles and competition and ultimately contributed to political instability. So that's why it failed. Now, federations have often been informed by the coming together of a number of established political communities that wish to preserve their separate identities and autonomy as with the US and Germany. Example is that Federation kasi, often happens when different political communities, they decided to join together while wanting to keep their unique identities and self-rule. Gaya nung sa USA and sa Germany. Another is another factor is the existence of external threat. Kasi for example, kasi when states feel vulnerable to external threats, they are more likely to join larger political union for protection, di ba? For example, the United States and Germany, and the formation of the federal Europe, 'di ba? So, it influenced by the fear na yung Soviet aggression and concern about losing influence in a world divided between superpowers. So, kasi, example, if you are most likely to, you're vulnerable to external threats, mas mabuti nang mag-join ka sa other political unions for protection, 'di ba? Yung mga mas malalaki yung power and political malalaki yung power gaya ng EU, mga ganon. So, that's why the use is federalism. Another factor is the geographical size. Gaya nung sabi ko nga, the use is federalism kasi nga dun sa yung geographical size nila. Now, we have here another factor is a cultural and ethnic heterogeneity. Kasi dito is that another factor is this culture and ethnic heterogeneity. So, meaning magkakaiba sila ng culture, ethnicity, something ganun, but they use federalism kasi they wanted to have this autonomy and self-rule. Even though magkakaiba sila ng culture, something ganun, is di naman sila naaapektuhan kasi nga the states they have their own rules, mga ganun. Now, let's go to the features of federalism. We have here, number 1, that each federal system is unique, in the sense that the relationship between the federal government and the state government is determined not just by the constitutional rules, political, historical, and others. In simpler terms, every federal system is special. Why? Because the national government and regional government is working together, and it's shaped by more than just the rules in the constitution that is influenced by the political, historical, geographical, cultural, and social circumstances. For instance, the United States, the federal system was shaped by the historical events like the American Revolution, cultural diversity among states, and the need for a strong central government to unite the newly independent states. Now, these mixed factors creates a unique relationship between the national and state governments. Now, the party system is as significant a determinant of federal-state relationships as are the constitutional allocated power of each level of government. Meaning, it's how political parties operate can be just as important as the rules in the Constitution in shaping how the national and state government work together in a federal system. For example, if one political party controls both the national and state government, they might work together more smoothly. On the other hand naman, if different parties control the national and state levels, there could be more disagreement and challenges in how they collaborate, right? Now, this party dynamic influences federal-state relationships alongside the constitutional framework. Now, there is a further contrast between federal regimes that operate a separation of power between the executive and legislative branches of government, and parliamentary system in which executive and legislative power is fused. Now, um, now, for instance, some federal system like the United States, diba, na, they have a clear separation between the leader, which is the president, and the lawmakers. While in another other system like yung mga parliamentary system na yung leader is part of the legislative branch. But while in the federal system na it is not. The leader is a president and there are uh, there are a lawmakers too. Now, um, an example nito is like in the United States, the president is separate from Congress. So, they are elected separately and have distinct powers. In contrast, in parliamentary system, gaya ng United Kingdom, yung prime minister, yung kasama ng parliament and usually the leader of the majority party, di ba? So, this fusion of executive and legislative powers is fundamental difference in how this system operate. Now let's go to the two relatively autonomous levels of government. Both central government and regional government possesses a range of power on which the other cannot encroach. A measure of legislative and executive authority in the capacity to raise a revenue, those enjoying a degree of fiscal independence. However, some government and judicial in some countries kasi, like Germany and Austria, they both the central government and yung regional government is they have their own powers and they can make their own rules. Each of them have the authority to create laws. They have to manage their own affairs and they can raise their money. However, there's a twist. While the central government sets the main policies, the regional government naman, they take care of the details and make those policies work on the ground. Now, this setup is known as administrative federalism, which is, I will discuss it naman mamaya. Now, written constitution, the responsibilities and power of each level of government are defined in a codified or written constitution. Meaning, written constitution. Meaning, that the rules and power for each level of government are clearly laid out in a formal written document. Meaning it's a rule book that everyone can refer to. For example, sa United States, there's a United States Constitution is a written document that outlines what the federal government can and cannot do. And they have this like, yung mga state, they also have its own written constitution with rules specific to that state. Now, this written guidance kasi, it helps to avoid confusion and it ensures everyone knows the boundaries of their authority. Now, constitutional arbiter, the formal provisions of the Constitution are interpreted by the Supreme Court, which thereby arbitrates in the case of dispute between federal and state levels of government. Meaning, constitutional arbiter is like a referee. There's a Supreme Court that interprets the rules in the Constitution. Now, especially when there are disagreements between the national and the state governments. Ganon. Gana sa US na yung Supreme Court, it serves as an constitutional arbiter, meaning it is the referee. Now, you have here linking institution in order to foster cooperation and understanding between federal and state levels of government. The region and provides and provinces must be given a voice in the process of central policy making. It is to encourage teamwork between the national and state government. It is important that the regional government have a say in creating central policies kasi they will be affected din naman. So, because of this, it helps to promote cooperation and understanding. Gaya ng sa Canada, there is a system now where provinces have a voice in federal policy making. And the federal government naman, it includes a representative from each province, and this helps ensure that the regional perspective are considered when national policies are developed. So this approach, it aims to create a sense of collaboration and inclusivity between different levels of government. Now, we have here executive federalism, administrative federalism, dual federalism, and fiscal federalism. Now let's go to executive federalism. It is a style of federalism in which the federal balance is largely determined by the relationship between the executives of each levels of government. Meaning, it focuses on how the executive branch, which is the president or the prime minister, interacts with the state governments. Meaning, collaboration between the national and state leaders is crucial in here. Example dito is yung United States during the emergence of crisis. The president may work closely with state governors to coordinate responses. Now, we have administrative federalism, a style of federalism in which central government is the key policymaker and provincial government is charged with responsibility for policy implementation. Dito naman is the central government sits over all policies and yung mga regional government, sila naman yung nag-handle the details of implementing these policies, kaya yung sabi ko kanina. Meaning, Germany, example nito is yung sa Germany and Austria, which is the example here. Diba? Nakikita niyo yun, yung two relatively autonomous level of government. Now, Germany and Austria naman is yung pinaka-central government, meaning, example, yung sa Germany and Austria, kasi the central government establishes broad guidelines and the state government naman, they manages the specifics of policy implementation. So, as for dual federalism naman, dual federalism is type of federalism in which federal and state provincial government occupy separate and seemingly indestructible spheres of policy power. Meaning, there's a clear separation of powers between the national and state government. Meaning, they each have their own responsibilities without much overlap. Example nito is no early years of the United States where yung federal and saka yung state government, they have the distinct or separate rules. Now, fiscal federalism, a style of federalism in which the federal balance is largely determined by funding arrangement, especially transfer payments from the century to the periphery. We're talking about payments here. So meaning, it deals with how the financial resources are shared between the national and the state government. Include dito is like gaya ng mga revenue distribution tsaka yung mga expenditure responsibilities. Example dito is yung Germany's fiscal federalism system where yung mga revenue sharing mechanism support economically weaker states. So meaning, they are supporting the economically weaker states. So there is a, what do we call this? There is a supporting. And fiscal federalism meaning there's a shared between the national and state government. It involves their revenues and their expenditure. Okay? I hope you understand. Now let's go to the assessment of federalism. Now before we start with the assessment, let's have the differences of this federalism. Let's first the executive federalism. Executive federalism meaning there is a collaboration between the executive and the state. Okay? And the administrative naman, there is a yung central yung nagsisits ng policies. Now, tapos yung mga regional yung nag-implement. As for the dual federalism naman, there's a separation of powers. Okay? So fiscal naman is there's a financial sharing of revenue and expenditure. Okay? If you have any question, just message me in my messenger account or in my Instagram account. I'll put my accounts in the at the top at the caption. Okay? Now, let's go to the assessment, which is number 1. A strength of federal system is that unlike the unitary system, they give regional and local interest a constitutionally guaranteed political voice due to the autonomous powers and some representation in central government. Number 2, the power of central government have expanded largely as a result of the growth of the economic and social intervention, and the central government owns greater revenue-raising capacities. This happened nung sa America, which has dual federalism before which turned into cooperative federalism, and then from middle 1960s, this led to the coercive federalism, where federal government has passed laws and imposed restriction on regional government. Number 3, it creates checks and balances helping protect individual liberty. So, meaning na there are different parts of government. It keep an eye on each other to make sure that there's no one becomes too powerful. This helps to protect people's individual freedom. Now, a weakness of federalism is that by constraining central authority, this makes the implementation of bold economic or social program more difficult. Meaning, ang weakness ng federal system is that when the central government powers is limited, diba? Central government power is limited, it can be challenged to carry out significant national programs. For instance, sa United States, the New Deal policy proposed by the President Roosevelt, it faced obstacles as the Supreme Court. It is aiming to protect state powers mid decision that weakened federal initiatives. Now, finally, federalism has provided an institutional mechanism through which fractured societies have maintained unity and coherence. Meaning, federalism has been a way for divided societies to stay together and work cohesively. It provides a system that helps to maintain unity despite internal difference. Now, let's go to the last, which is the danger of federalism is that by breeding governmental division, it may strengthen centrifugal pressures and ultimately lead to disintegration. As a result, that federal systems are inherently unstable, tending either towards the guaranteed unity that only a unitary system can offer or towards greater decentralization and ultimate collapse. Meaning, ang downside naman ng federalism is that it can create divisions in government. So, in some cases, yung mga division na to, it leads to risk of falling apart. Now, some argue that federal system naman is inherently unstable. It leaning either toward a more unified setup like a unitary system, or it breaking down into greater decentralization and possible collapse. Example din nito is that sa Canada there is a debates about success of federalism kasi it concerning its goal to bring together the French-speaking and the English-speaking population. Kasi some believe that federal system hasn't completely achieved harmony between these linguistic groups and questions its effectiveness in ensuring a stable political union. So meaning it highlights that a challenge where the intended unity may not be fully realized within the federal structures. So there's no things naman as a perfect, 'di ba? There's always these challenges. Now, the vast majority of contemporary states have unitary systems of government. Na pangalawa, this vast sovereign power in a single national institution. Kasi in most countries today, the government system is unitary, di ba? Meaning all these significant powers rest in one central institution, which is the national level or the central government. Example sa United Kingdom, which is a unitary system, diba? Which is the parliament in London holds the primary authority, making decision for the entire country without significant independent powers given to regional government. Now, gaya dito sa Philippines, which is yung central government is in Manila, holds, diba? Holds significant authority over region in local governments. While there are local official and autonomy to some extent, ultimately sovereignty in major decision making naman talaga is nasa national government talaga. Now, since constitutional supremacy is vested with the century in the unitary system, any system of peripheral or local government exists at the pleasure of the century. This creates the spectre of unchecked centralization. Meaning like in a unitary system, the central kasi yung nag-holds ng ultimate power, and yung mga local government naman, they exist just because the central government allows them to. So this setup can lead to excessive centralization without effective checks. Imagine niyo man yung country with a unitary system where yung mga local governments na may mga limited autonomy and yung mga decision making is nasa central government. Override local preferences constantly. So meaning, yung mga unchecked centralization, it can limit the ability of local communities to address their unique needs and independently. Diba? Two distinct institutional forms peripheral authority exist in unitary states, which is a local government and developed assemblies. Each of these gives center-periphery relationships a distinct shape. Meaning, there are two types of local authority, local government and devolved assemblies. Now, each of these, it shapes the relationship between the central and the local levels differently. Example is, think a unitary state na yung local government, it handles everyday local issues like yung mga city councils, managing schools and services. On the other hand naman, yung mga devolved assemblies might exist like in the UK where Scotland has its parliament with specific powers granted by the central government, creating distinct dynamics in how power is distributed. Now, so that's unitary system. Unitary system meaning they are often more efficient in decision making as there is a single central authority making and implementing policies. It ensures uniform laws and policies across the entire nation, avoiding discrepancies between different regions. It clear lines of authority make it easier to understand and enforce laws and policies nationwide. Now that's all. Gochuzo arigato gozaimashita. Thank you for listening, and if you have any question, I'm going to put my Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, Telegram on the description on the description box, and I hope you have a good holidays, you have a good new year, and good luck to us to the upcoming exam. Good luck. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.